Hello there. This evening I'm in the Emirates Lounge at London Gatwick, waiting for a flight to take me to Dubai, the first leg of my trip home to New Zealand. And while I'm here, I'm having a look at the wine selection, and I was really interested to see this particular wine, which is from Roche de Bellene. It's their Bourgogne Chardonnay Cuvee Reserve 2023. One of the reasons this caught my interest is this is a wine made by somebody called Nicolas Potel. And fairly recently, I've looked at one of Nicolas' Bourgogne Chardonnays from his parallel business from Domaine De Bellene, which is where he makes wines from the vineyards on the estate that he owns. That particular wine was the Clos de la Chapelle, and I'll put a link in the notes below so that if you're interested in the contrast between these two wines, you can follow that link and you can have a look at the tasting I did for that as well. Now, Roche de Bellene was a company founded in 2008. And it was founded following Nicolas selling his eponymous wine business to the Potel brothers, who owned the larger negociant Wine. So having sold his business, he continued running it for a few years, but at the same time purchased and built up his estate, Domaine De Bellene, and then followed that up by starting a negociant business, Roche de Bellene. Now, Nicolas' background is a really interesting one. He grew up at one of Burgundy's great estates, Domaine d'Or, in Volnay, and I think it was intended that he should take over the estate from his father. However, eventually his father sold the estate just before his death in 1997, leaving Nicolas to start his first negociant business, the one that bore his name. Nicolas' background is that he's worked both internationally and for some of the top domains in Burgundy. For example, he worked for Domaine Christophe Roumier. Now, Nicolas has built up a really impressive set of wines, including many Premier Cru and several Grand Cru, such as Le Montrachet, Le Chambertin, Clos de la Roche, and Clos Vougeot. And he's achieved this by being very exacting. He will only work with growers who are farming responsibly, by which he means growers whose viticulture is organic or who are using the lutte raisonnée, the rational struggle, using minimal inputs in the vineyard, and then only when absolutely necessary. The growers that Nicolas has sought out to work with are those who have vines over 40 years old. So he's been looking for exceptional sites. He makes his wines not as large blends, but as wines from single vineyard sites. This wine, for instance, although we're not told where it is, we're told that this is a site where the soils are a combination of clay and limestone. The site is at 245 metres above sea level. It's planted at a density of 10,000 vines per hectare, so quite densely planted. And yields are restricted to 65 hectolitres per hectare. And these vines are 40 years old, ensuring they're fully mature, making it more likely that the fruit they produce will have a good degree of concentration. We're told that the fruit was picked in September 2023. We're not given a date. Everything was hand-picked. We're also told that fermentation went on as a result of the action of indigenous yeasts, so those yeasts that had found their way into the winery on the fruit or were already present in the winery. Now, the notes go on to say that the wine aged in French oak. It doesn't tell me for how long, it doesn't tell me the size or the age of that oak. I would assume, given the wine's price level, that the majority of that was seasoned oak. The fact that they specifically talk about maturing in oak makes me think the wine almost certainly fermented in stainless steel tanks. All the wine underwent a malolactic conversion, and we're told that following aging in barrel, it was fined and filtered prior to bottling. I'm also told that the wine is suitable for vegetarians. So let's have a look at it and see what we make of it, shall we? We've got a medium yellow colour there. Swelling it, the wine is labelled as 12.5% alcohol, so not particularly high for Chardonnay, to be honest. It's clinging fairly readily to the sides of the glass there, and I think eventually, yes, there we go, he's forming some tears. So let's see what we make of the aromas, shall we? Gosh, the aromas have got a really nice stone fruit ripeness. Somewhere in the spectrum from quite ripe peach through to an almost apricot-y richness. There are perhaps some lemony top notes, but I'm not getting strong notes of cedar or vanilla that might suggest use of plentiful new oak in fermentation or in aging. So that's for taste. Again, those rich stone fruit notes are very much to the fore, but they're supported by some really nice clean mineral acidity. It's giving a lovely mouth-watering nature to the fruit on the front of the tongue. There are some lemony and citric notes coming through on the sides of my tongue and towards the front of my tongue, giving good freshness. The wine is at best of mid-weight, but there's a rounded richness and harmony to the entire wine that I would assume has been created by lees aging in barrel, probably a bit of lees stirring, just helping give a little more richness and fatness to the back palate. The flavours are lasting really quite well. They're relatively simple and straightforward, but they're attractive. Alcohol is balanced. That acidity is giving quite nice length. Considering this is one of the portfolio's more entry-level wines, I have to say this is a really nicely made wine. Looking at the Wine Searcher aggregated critic score, that comes in at 89 out of 100, and I think that's pretty fair. I don't think I'd have a problem if the score was 90, but in honesty, this is a really well-made but somewhat straightforward wine. It's got some really good intensity. The flavours last very well. So how do I think this compares to the more expensive Clos de la Chapelle from Domaine De Bellene? Actually, I think there's a wonderful family similarity between the two wines. Something in the harmony, the roundness of the back palate, the generosity of the fruit. I don't think this has the complexity. I don't think this quite has the integrated oak elements that the wine from Domaine De Bellene showed. But I'd assume that's a somewhat more expensive wine. I think this is a very pretty and very enjoyable wine. And it's a real delight to find it in an airport lounge like this, where I think the selection is actually generally quite well thought out. I think Emirates tend to do a good job with their wines, and for me, this is one of the elements that makes me enjoy travelling with them. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, do please press the like button. That would be fantastic. If you would like to watch more of these videos, it would be wonderful if you consider signing up and subscribing to my YouTube channel. If you have any friends you think might like to watch the videos, feel free to pass it on to them. I'd really appreciate your support in that way. If you have any comments, please pop those in the comments box below. I would be very interested in your feedback on the wines I'm looking at, the tastings I'm doing, or anything else that relates to that. I will of course leave a link in the notes below to the Wine Searcher webpage for this vintage of this wine, so you can see if it's available near you and at what price. Do consider following the link to the tasting for the Domaine De Bellene Clos de la Chapelle Bourgogne Chardonnay, and I hope you find that an interesting comparison. So thank you once again for watching, and I do hope you'll manage to make some time and come and join me for another tasting at some stage in the near future. Till then, bye for now.